Okay, so today is the 1st of October, and this is the public session. And my name is Pejman Parchami. And just I want to start off with, I want to mention this again on the recording, is that we have an orientation process where you can become a regional coordinator. And it's a 22 weeks where we have a program set up for you to get, to learn more about what the Venus project is. And then you get a form of title as a regional coordinator. And then you can hold events and we will support you and we will collaborate with you, and together, hopefully we can get the word out in a more appropriate way if you have that, a background in what the subject is about. A lot of people project into what it is. Now, when we have this, we can have a form of standardization and say, well, you at least done 22 weeks, and here's your weaknesses, and here are your strengths, and let's continue to work on them. And today, if you can help me, if you want to ask a question, try to summarize what it is you want to ask as best as you can. Push it together, and I will assist you and see if I'm on the right track when I try to answer a question. And today's session, I'm going to be talking regarding the questions you have, but I haven't prepared anything particular. Now, just a short background. I started in 2010 by watching the Zeitgeist movies. And there I saw Jacque Fresco. And I always remind myself that I had no idea what he was babbling about. It was a very confusing subject to me. And I mostly ignored what he had to say about it. And I just enjoyed the Zeitgeist. But somehow I started to discuss this with other people. And I watched everything and I bought their material and I started to create these kinds of events here in Stockholm. And I did this for many, many years. It's been, I think, 8 years now. Every 2 months at least, I've met people discussing this subject. And around 2016, I went and met Jacque and Roxanne. And my main goal was to, get access to more material because I couldn't get enough. And I knew that they had a lot of transcriptions. And I told them, give them to me and I will transcribe them for you. And that was a way for me to get access to more material. And I did this for 3 years. That became my hobby, no more doing other things. Whenever I had 10, 15 minutes, I would transcribe something. Later on, I became a regional coordinator for Sweden. And today I'm going through the Social Cyberengineering Education Project. And this is something that Roxanne supports. It's a longer educational program. It takes around 3 years. Adam, that is here with us today, he's also going through this process. And hopefully in a year or so, I'm finished. So that's why I put this disclaimer that today I don't represent the Venus project. I will share my thoughts about it. So you can view me in that manner. Now, I will open it up here today. I just want to ask a question. Is there anybody here that has no idea what the Venus project is? You can write it in the chat, like you have not been exposed at all to this. Paulo, are you there?
Hello, are you listening?
Yes, I hear you. You had your microphone on.
Sorry, I had some problems with my microphone. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Have you heard about the Venus project before?
Yeah, I know quite some time. Sorry, my English is not that good. I will try to keep up. Okay.
Don't worry.
But I heard about it some years ago. I don't even remember how I knew the Venus project, but I found it, I think, in the internet. I visited the website, I saw the videos, and I like it very much. But I follow sometimes some materials, but that's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Okay.
that's great. Thank you, Paulo. Okay, Radu, later on, I'm gonna send you the recording and you can see that. And if you want to read about that social cyberengineering education project, you can, there is on their website, the Venus project. You can see it there. All right, guys. So everybody's a little bit familiar with the subject. And now, is there anything in particular while you've been working on this or learning about this subject that you feel that you might not grasp, or you have tried to explain to other people and you felt it was very difficult to get certain points across? Just raise your hand if you have, if you want to bring something up. Yes, Marco.
Okay, Pejman. In several occasions, I try to talk about some of my friends if they can imagine to live in without working for money mechanism. I just wanted to hear their thoughts about, but I have to be honest. I read something, I tried to think about it. In first time I had even a very big problem to think out of the scope of this system reeling. So I must say very interesting thoughts, explanations, and ideas I received when I asked. Then at that point, I understood that I myself do not understand very well.
Yeah.
I like the idea, sounds very good. I understand it, but there's a lot of things need to be done in order to be in a good position to explain to the others.
Yeah. Sorry, John and Paul, can you just wait a second and let's try to tackle this question. Now, can I ask you a couple of questions, Marco, if you can stay?
Yes.
How did you start when you started this question? Can you guys imagine a world without money? And were they on board, or they said, for example, how do you motivate people? Was that a question they asked?
No.
No. Can you assist me?
They just ask how you suppose to organize that, or how do you mean? But world cannot function without working for money mechanism. For example, my exact question was, can you imagine your life without working for money mechanism? Not just without money, but to live with some other, let's say, type of economy or organizing the life or the work. It was a very vast topic, but as I said, at that point I realized I am not able to ask proper question, to get into much details, and to create good answer if somebody answers me back.
So we have a goal. Let's say here, we want to educate a person for them to imagine a world without money. This is our goal. Now, instead of tackling the whole world immediately, try to break it down to something simple. Now, Marco, if I ask you this, do you do anything that you enjoy, but you don't get paid for?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, I can. I am a volunteer in local high school, and we are organizing some actions regarding environmental protection. So we have, for example, we are organizing to celebrate important ecological days. For example, a Planet Earth Day, an hour for a Planet Earth, also just to pass the message of the importance of environmental protection.
Okay, that's
that
great.
Is something I'm enjoying, and that is my volunteer work.
Okay, that is exactly what we need. And that is an example of, let me just, yeah. So that is a personal example, okay? And then in the future, you ask that person, you know, what do you do for free? And they might say, you know, I like to, you know, do a certain sport. And they pay to do that. So they lose money to do certain things in their life, but they enjoy it. So their motivation is not always money. Now, if they agree with these personal things, that people can do things without the money, then you can use, for example, history as an example of certain circumstances where society said money will be put aside or not used as it used to be used, but used to an end goal. So, for example, if a country goes to war, they might put money aside for a short while and say, we will seize your factory if you don't produce airplanes for the amount we want. And they take it. And he says, what happened to capitalism? They say, sorry, we're going to war. So we're going to produce, we're going to put capitalism aside, and we're going to ask this question: can we produce enough airplanes to win the war against the Germans? And they tackle that. So that is a history example. And maybe you have other examples in society where they put those things aside. Now, I wish I knew how to get you guys to stop drawing on this. If you can, I know it's very exciting. But those two examples, you pull those towards. So you begin with a personal example, then you relate it to things that happen in history, and then you move it towards the goal of, can you imagine people being organized in a way that there is no need for money? And this last part is not something you solve on a 5-minute break. This is a long discussion, and but this is where you're supposed to start. You start with your personal thoughts, history, things that they can relate to, and then you move towards this. And this is a big topic, this last part. So that's how I would tackle those things, is to take it, instead of saying a world without money, that is too big. You start with asking them, do you do anything that you enjoy without getting money for it? And then you move the conversation towards a world without money. Okay, so that's how I will tackle that, Marco.
Yes, good point, because this conversation about this topic started when we talked about economy, how we need to work more and more, how everything is expensive, we don't see the end, and what to do. Then I jumped in and said this, but you're right, it was a bad approach.
It's not a bad approach. That's the approach that we all go through.
Yes.
And if they were really seeking, then that would be the greatest approach. They say, you know, I want something brand new. Then you hit them with that. If they're really looking, then you go immediately to a world without money and they say, yeah, let's explore this. But if they're not ready for it, you start simple and then you slowly move the conversation there. And this is regarding all TVP topics. You start simple. We always start extreme, and then they lose connection with us. Start it simple, and then you see how far they will permit you to move towards what you have in mind.
Well, in general, and also I apologize for my English, maybe also
Don't worry about it.
familiar for all good in economy, but in general, history or former Yugoslavia, there is one interesting thing, because we were not keen and too much related with the East and the West, and everybody give us the money. So in general, former Yugoslavia economy was not so great, and people are here learned and raised, but somebody will give us. We will go in travel and somebody will help us, give us the money.
Hmm.
And when we got to the point, okay, but we need now to do something for ourselves, to be on our own, what to do. Then we hit the wall, and we had at some point the biggest inflation in the history of the world, for
Yeah.
example, because of that. And that's how, that is the main thing when I first time saw the Venus project through the Zeitgeist movies, I started thinking, okay, I should never allow myself, my family, and my friends and my country to repeat that mistake with the biggest inflation. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So we need to do something about it.
Thank you for sharing that, Marco.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, guys, let's take the next one. Eric, where are you from, Eric?
I'm from Mexico, but I'm residing in London at the moment.
Okay, nice to meet you. How long have you been following the Venus project?
For a couple of years now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. Okay, what did you want to say?
Yes, I think the conversation on economics more or less goes well when I'm talking to people about this, but it's more about the starting of building the cities, because a lot of the project that needs to well, in order for the project to work, many aspects of it, there has to be a city that is quite systematic and quite broad, and you know, it's just difficult to see how can that construction start, or what type of regions, you know, because should we suddenly start building cities out of the blue, like I think Saudi Arabia is building the Neom city, which is just like a straight line, or should we kind of redo the capital cities or important cities and rebuild them into like a centric system, like the ones Jacque Fresco designed? Like in terms of infrastructure, how would it start developing? That's
Okay. I'm going to give you a short story first, and it's a person from a particular television show that visits Roxanne, and he's there, and he's very fascinated about the cities, and he's looking around, and he says, and he's talking with them, and exactly at the end of this 3-minute short clip, he sits with her and he says, oh, so there is something else. It's not just about the cities. It's about changing the values. Now, for me, that is the summary of how I look at the cities. The cities are like a visual thing. And the more you get into it, the more you look into what kind of world do you have to have for that to come about. But you don't focus so much on the city. The city is the visual thing in the beginning, but the values that go with that kind of city is more important. That's why if in Dubai, they would create, you know, a replica of Jacque Fresco's city design, and they would send me there, I would say, great, it looks exactly like he designed it. Now, my question to you is, do you have any bosses here? Do the rich people live on that side or on the top of the building? What is the function of this city? Why did you build this city? What are you trying to achieve? Oh, this is for vacation. This is, you know, for amusement park. Oh, okay. It looks great, but it has none of the values that the Venus project wants to be implemented into the city. Okay, I hope you get my point, that there is something more than just the visual. So imagine if somebody would say to us, you know, we can build your city, but we want it to be a commercial city. We want Coca-Cola logos everywhere. And, you know, we don't want certain kinds of people in this city from a particular race, because the owner does not enjoy seeing those kinds of people. You know, then the person is missing out on what this is about. So the city has to be followed with the values that are relevant for that kind of world or that kind of city. Eric, let me know if I'm not clear with you.
I understand. You're talking about the city is more like a byproduct of the whole value structures and the changes I have to do with the people first. So I guess I can go with that. But
Yeah.
it's not that explanation.
You could have a city, for example, in this manner, that somebody backs your city and you say, great. And you build whatever you have access to, depending on the resources. So you build the best that you can build. And it can be a commercial city in this sense that it's some sort of museum that you just show the possibilities of the future. And then you have to have some sort of profit in the sense of selling tickets. That's what Roxanne does. When you go and visit her, you pay for the tour. But I have heard if you go there and you don't have any money, she said it's fine.
Do you have any updates on the city that they were building? I thought there was going to be something in Venus. They were starting to build something slightly larger. Is that true?
No, they were working on the blueprint for the city. Adam, that is here with us. Adam, do you want to give a short summary on that work?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. Thanks, Benjamin. So hi, everyone. If you haven't met me before, my name is Adam. I'm just watching and listening in on Benjamin out of interest on what he's doing with his volunteer works. I work as well in the AEC team for the Venus project, working on as Benjamin indicated, the drawings and specifications of the Center for Resource Management. And so right now we've began initial concept development of the overall site plan, the superstructure, and other teams, other sub-teams involved under the AEC team is also working on logistics and back-end requirements to operate the Center for Resource Management. So we've transitioned from initial concept development so we could understand the physical parameters of the project at a high level, at a concept level. And now we're transitioning into the same level of detail for the operational mechanisms of the facility itself. And then future work will integrate those two teams more tightly to create the design development drawings for that project. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for that. Eric, was your question clarified, or do you want to take it in a different angle? It's okay.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the technologies that go in the city, but when it comes to that question on what starts first, that's answered. So thank you.
I can just add to that just a little bit. So Eric, with regards to specific implementations, obviously that's still a ways away because we're in concept design right now. So once we get further along, and right now what we have is 3 separate phases for the project, kind of the concept design, and then the detailed documentation or the working drawings, that's phase 2. And that's where we start to specify particular systems and requirements for the physical construction. And then phase 3 is the actual implementation stage. And that's where we would be integrating specific technologies. So ideas and concepts that you're interested in would come in more in phase 2, which is still a little ways out.
Thank you for that. For the new people that have joined, if you want to ask a question, you can raise, there's a function in Zoom where you can raise your hand like Paulo has done. Paulo, would you like to ask your question or?
Yeah, a little question about regarding the city. The technology you're using to implement the city are you have some direction to use just like open source technology, or there are also commercial technologies. You have supporting companies in that project. I don't know if I was clear. Sorry.
Yeah, Paulo, I believe I understand your question. So that's still a little ways off. That's in phase 2 when we really start to look at the granular detail specifications of how we're going to be executing it. At this particular stage, we're looking at broad strokes to understand the actual requirements. And so when it comes down to, will it be open sourced? Will it be proprietary based off of manufacturers? That's a little bit to be determined. I have a feeling that it's going to be a balance of both, that there's going to be incentivization to make it open source and a more flexible with regards to volunteers providing products and services during the execution phase. But some of it won't be able to be, and that's because we're going to be dealing with regulations. And regulations will dictate that we're going to need to use certain proprietary things. For example, sprinkler systems for fire suppression in the building, that can't be open source. That's going to have to be very specific to a manufacturer. So that way, their product, which has an underwriter listing approving it for use in a particular area, in a particular building, that would have to be specified. So again, I think it's a ways off before we can really arrive at that decision. But during the interim, I have a feeling that it's going to be some type of mixture of the two.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Let me just build upon, when you transition, it's always relying on what do you have access to, not what do you want. You can have a goal in mind, but you will be moved by what kind of resources you have to work with. So if you have a total collapse of the city and the military comes in and says, what do you want? We would like to test your city. You say, all of it. And then you call Adam and you say, implement. But if somebody only says, I have a lot of trees here, I'm a billionaire, you can have all the trees that you want. Maybe Adam starts to build circular cities out of trees. And I ask him, what kind of future is this? Adam, is this the future? He says, no, this is what I have to work with. This is the best that we have at this time. So he works within the area that society permits him, or that people fund it and say, you can have this. You can have this space of area to build upon. And then he has to redesign it depending on the terrain. So sometimes people ask a question, how much will the city cost? That is not an appropriate question for us. The question is, what kind of resources will we have access to? Money isn't a fixed structure where you can do a calculation and say, 2.5 billion. And tomorrow, that 2.5 million might mean nothing because China decided to stop selling steel for the same price. And you say, I need 5 billion. But you said yesterday 2.5. Yeah, it's no longer relevant. That's why we don't have any calculation of exactly what it is we need. We only ask, what do we have to work with? And then you work within that area. Karim, what is your question?
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late. I did have a meeting for my work, but if I'm going to be a little bit of a bother and kind of just ask if maybe we can have a little bit of a recap, just a short, brief recap, just for the newcomers.
Yeah, sure.
Because I missed the beginning. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Thank you for letting us know. So just briefly, my name is Pejman, and I've been holding these kinds of sessions for many years. And I don't directly represent the Venus Project, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I'm working closely to hopefully soon become some sort of representative that Roxanne Meadows, accepts and say, it's okay. Pejman can handle this part. He has shown that he is a valuable member and he is the things that he says has some sort of relevance. But there is no, there is no finish line regarding the Venus project. There is no perfect answers. We have to constantly be working on these. And today's session is an open session for whatever questions you have. You don't have to ask nice questions. If you have problems with the subject, let us know, and let's try to break it down and see if we can arrive at something together. So if you want to ask any questions, just raise your hand, and we're very happy to have you here. Is it Eirik? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What is your question? Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. No.
On.
Now.
Yeah, you can hear me now, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. I was using the speaker to listen, but I had a few questions. I'm located in the United States, and we have the 501c3s and 501c4s that do the fundraising for lobbying groups in the local states for projects. And I was thinking in the sense of when you do get into phase 2 or phase 3, and he was talking about the regulation and the underwriting for some of these projects, a lot of this is really advanced technology that hasn't been applicated yet. So I was watching this thing about 3D printing homes, and a lot of the issues they had is they had to use inferior insulation techniques. That was the only way that they could approve through the regulation in that county. So for one, does the Venus Project have a 501c3 or a 501c4? And do they have a legal team for underwriting for the regulations? And what states, would be the most appealing is a thing that I'm thinking of. Like what states would have the least regulations on something so experimental? But ultimately, it's not going to necessarily be in America, as you guys mentioned, because it's where in the world are the most resources. And when I mean most resources, the most elements we would need to use: the water, the irons, lithium, any kind of materials that would be needed to build the city and to maintain the city. And then also is the question of eminent domain. What country owns that land? There's just a lot of different questions that come into play with building that city. And I just want to see what you guys know of that, or what's going on with that. I have another question, but I'll save it for later. I'll have other people say something, but I'm going to turn you back on speaker.
Take it now. Take that other question as well.
And the other question is, I understand that Jacque Fresco always mentioned that it needed to be a critical mass within the human consciousness of the global society to actually do a top-down approach when it comes to something this holistic and massive on such a massive industrial and infrastructure scale. In what ways has anybody talked about taking it from a grassroots approach from the bottom? Because the top-down has to be done through what I think he alluded to in some of the videos I'd seen. But he was saying that, it isn't going to necessarily happen, with little spores across the planet. How would I phrase this? But what way could you do more of a primitive style of the Venus Project construction? Like, let's say you didn't have access to the technologies or resources or the 3D printers or the massive industrial scale. What could you do in a mock version of the Venus Project, but with just basic natural resources? I always think of Michael Reynolds and his Earthship communities, and that's where they do the permaculture and the sustainable systems they have going there. And a lot of that doesn't require a lot of resources, or it's recycled material. So I was thinking, I guess that's more of the phase 3 approach, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Now for the first questions you had, those are very detailed regarding, what kind of country and
hold on. Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Because
no worries. I muted you. That's fine. Those first questions, if Adam, if you don't have any thoughts about that,
Yeah, you touched base, Eric, on a lot of informed topics. So I can tell that you have a bit of competency, and so I think I can address a lot of those questions that you have. Regarding 501 or 503, I believe Venus Project is registered as a 503c. That information is transparently indicated on their website. So you can actually just go check that out. I think RBE is as well as an organization. Regarding lobbying, I don't think we have any, I don't think that's an objective, but I understand that in a structure like that, you could. So I appreciate that. Okay, you touched on a number of things. I'll try and get them all. So there's no guarantee where it's going to be built. So we don't know what the regulatory authorities or the authorities having jurisdiction are in the particular build location. So that's a future question that we really can't answer. Next is underwriting. So when I refer to underwriting, I'm referring to listed fire assemblies, life safety systems, and fire protection, so building underwriting. And so anything that we do, any building that we make during this time from now to the future has to be approved under nominal underwriting parameters. So what I mean in that very broad, vague language is that when we build the buildings, they will have to be to code. Whatever code for the area we're building under, whether it's Yugoslavia or Tuktoyaktuk, it has to be conforming to those building code characteristics. You had a bit of a projection in your early questions that the Center for Resource Management will be using high-tech methodology. It's easy to presume that given the way the renderings look, the artistic renderings of the buildings. However, those shapes are completely buildable using regulated construction techniques. Domes, for example, could be reinforced concrete domes, and the insulation technique could be closed cell spray foam insulation sprayed on the inside or the outside of the dome shell, all conforming to statutes and regulations in most building jurisdictions, and have superior insulation techniques. So some of the other examples that you have in mind may not have followed those requirements as rigorously as we would be required to. So that was underwriting and codes. Ownership, we would need to purchase the land, plain and simple. The Venus Project would need to have ownership of the land in which the center is built on, for simplicity more than anything. In this particular stage, because we're in a capitalist world, so we need to have ownership of some things just because of we're working within the system, right? Because we can't just build whatever we want to build. We have to build whatever the system allows us to build, and we have to follow their rules. And that's one of the reasons why I'm helping out, is to make sure that, as we're going through these different phases from 1, 2, 3, that we're able to keep up with what those requirements are going to be. Technology and implementation, yeah, obviously things are always changing, and codes and standards, they take a long time to revise their language. 3D printed houses, as an example, which is an unreinforced, traditionally unreinforced concrete structure. And so that wouldn't need to be handled carefully if we were to approach it in that particular manner, using on a giant scale, as for the size of a very large building where there's going to be the public involved. And so there's ways that can be addressed in the technical drawings and specifications, with architects and engineers signing off or stamping their drawings and providing surety to the authority having jurisdiction that those requirements have been adhered to and satisfied. And sometimes you would need to do what's called an alternate solution, where a separate consultant or consultants are engaged to facilitate interpretation of the building code here versus the desired structure there. And so they'll act as a bridge using their professional opinion to address concerns that the authority having jurisdiction or the city might have in that particular instance. Regarding top-down versus bottom-up approach, that's a very large scoping question. I'll leave that to Benjamin, as well as starting small and like an earth building systems thing. I think Benjamin can probably also provide some insight into some of that logic and reasoning. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adam. What do we want to achieve? We want a global economic system. How can you start that in a small way? You know, it's not really that which is the goal. You could start a community to, for example, relieve yourself of the pressures of society. For example, if me and 10 people were working 24/7 for the Venus project, and we say, hey guys, let's live together. We save a lot of money, and then we can spend more time doing the thing that we enjoy. That's fine, but that is different. That has nothing to do with a resource-based economy. A resource-based economy is, look at it as capitalism. It is when it's functional all around the world, then you have it as a global system. Okay, everything else is some sort of transition that is working for a little community, and it might work, you know, particular areas, but it's not what we're aiming for. But if it gives you relief, well, enjoy that, take that journey on. Now, the critical mass bit, our attitude is a little bit different, how we view change. We don't look at what people want or what leaders say. We look more at the circumstances, because to us, it is the circumstances that force change. Now, if you take great leaders that talked at the wrong time, the reason they are not great is because they talked at the wrong time. They said something that society at that particular time could not accept. That's why we don't hear about them. The people we remembered had good timing, or they were pushed forward because there were openings in society saying, you know, what do you want to talk about? And they say, oh, this person says something different. You can take Adolf Hitler, you can take Trump, you can take Nelson Mandela. You know, first he was in prison. That's how he started. And then society said something happened, circumstances changed, and they said, you're the president now. Okay, maybe he said the same thing for 30 years, but there has to be changes in society. Now, you can't force change in a society that is reinforced by maintaining what is working for them, what the people in charge get out of it. So you push and they will push back harder, because they say, your world is a fantasy, but if I do this, tomorrow I get vacation, I get a bigger house, I can pay off my mortgage of the house, and you know, my medical bills. This is reality. It is when this reality doesn't work, that's when they turn and say, what is this? Socialism, communism, the Venus Project, too much. It is when socialism and communism doesn't work, they say, what was that? And then they become what they think is extreme, and they start tossing those ideas around. Now, for those that are living in the US, you can take Bernie Sanders as a good example. No, he's been babbling about the same thing for many years, and for some particular reasons, because of social change, because of pressures, now they say, you know, he almost became the candidate and almost became the president. But 20 years ago, they said, you know, we don't want to hear that. And he was pushed down. So that's how we look at change. There has to be circumstances for it. That is why most of us here say the same thing. I started around 2010, 2011, and it was the pressures of society that that Peter Joseph created something. It was an appropriate time, and then it got the ball rolling. When society stabilizes, these extreme ideas like the Venus Project go down, and then you have 5 people hanging around with Jacque Fresco. And then when you have problems, then suddenly we have 25 people here. Okay, so we don't just rely on great leaders or great personalities. We look at the circumstances. Now, the better you're prepared to talk about the Venus Project means that it's like this. It's like a person, you have learned something, but the person has no need for that. I'm a programmer. He says, I don't need it. But when he starts a company, he says, you were a programmer, can you assist me? The better programmer you are, the better you can assist him. So the better you learn about the Venus Project, when the circumstances are correct, you will be able to better present what it is and get them on board quicker. But you have to wait for those opportunities. Eric, I hope that was fine. That I know that is a different way of looking at it. And most people want somebody to solve our problems, but we look at the circumstances. Are the circumstances okay? Then we jump on board. Karim, what is your question?
So I wanted to understand, we're talking here about looking at building, I guess, the first sample city or the first city as an example. So my question has 2 parts. First of all, what would be the purpose of building the sample city? And the reason I'm asking this question is because, if I remember correctly, the whole design that Jacque Fresco put forward was innovative and new, and it was proving a point of, you know, the way he was looking at architecture, the way he was looking at design. Now, based on what Adam was saying, right, trying to comply with the current regulations that are imposed by countries, aren't we kind of defeating the point of what basically Jacque Fresco envisioned in his design, or his the challenge that he put in the design and the architecture that he created? Aren't we kind of twisting a little bit that structure and not proving the point that Jacque Fresco had put in his design, that we can do this in a different way? Do you get my point?
Can you summarize it one more time? Like, do you mean that we're going against his design by creating something else?
No, well, kind of, by creating it based on the regulation imposed by those different governments, right?
Okay.
So if we have, for example, sprinkler systems, right? Because those are code. I don't remember what was the design or what was the idea that Jacque Fresco had against fires. I think maybe it was
but fireproof buildings.
Exactly. So
yeah,
I remember one of them as well was the no need for the, let's say, AC, because the material itself would be self-cooling in the summer and heating in the winter.
Yeah, the building expands.
Exactly. So those were ideas that Jacque Fresco had in the design itself and the way those buildings are designed.
Yeah.
So if we're not proving that point as part of the primary city that we're building, so what is the goal currently of doing this the system or the city? Sorry.
Okay.
This
now,
example city.
Thank you for your question. It's an important question, and it's what I tried to mention earlier. It is not about what we want, it's about what do you have to work with. You can have a vision in mind and saying, you know, I wish we had this and this and this. And then Adam says, this is what we have to work with. We need to have sprinklers. We don't have that. So you work within the limitations of the society. The society says, you know, you can't have 500 people in that building, only 200. Now, would you like to protest? You could do that. Or you say, at this time, we accept that and we move along with the boundaries in this society. So it isn't that we put those limitations. Those limitations are because of the circumstances. It's like going to Roxanne and saying, why do you only have 7 buildings? It's because of the circumstances. They couldn't afford more. Why do I have to pay for the books? You promote a world without money, because she has to, they create them by themselves. Now, even his design will be re-examined. We do not uphold his design as final, as this is it. Yes, Karim.
Right, sorry, I'm gonna just to clarify, I understand what you're saying, but I'm thinking more in terms of when Jacque Fresco developed the Venus project, right? He did a holistic approach. That includes looking at how to design in a different way, because that works within that design, correct? And then the design of the Venus project. So by building the first city, my understanding was that we're trying to show that this proposal actually works, right? We're trying to demonstrate that this project can actually be functional, can actually work.
Good afternoon, this is Adam.
Oh, sorry. There you go.
So I understand that we have to work within the limits of current society, but by working within those limits of current society, are we actually pushing those boundaries?
No, you're not. Yeah. You're pushing them as much as you can within the boundaries. You cannot step out of the boundaries, because when you step out of the boundaries, then you're in a fantasy. The boundaries is what takes you to reality. And you look in your inventory and say, we want to do this. And before you decide to start moving, you look into the inventory. Do we have the capabilities? No, instead of building the whole city, let's just build 1/8 and try to do it better than do a simpler design. Let's concentrate it. That could be, for example, an approach. What is the goal of the first city is more important. First, you set a goal. What do we want? We would like to give people a visual illustration of what the city could look like. Then you look at the inventory. Say, we can't build the full city. Then it will look very cheap. If we build 1/8 of the city, it will look a little bit better, more appropriate. So that's how you get moved.
Just an idea here. Are we talking about a full-sized building? So I guess maybe let me explain that a little bit more. If we were to approach it from a miniature design point of view, a functional miniature design, something that's not livable, do we still have to comply with the codes?
How miniature are you talking about? If you go to in Florida, Jacque Fresco has a miniature design. You can expand
something a little bit bigger that can actually use the technology that we're proposing, right? And it's functional, fully functional, how the design should work, but it's not something that humans would live in right now. It's just a demonstration, like a mock, but a little bit bigger that's actually using technology. Do we still have, in that case, do we still have to comply with the regulations of fire extinguishers or so and so? Because technically then it's not a livable building.
No, of course, in those circumstances, you don't have to prove that the toilet works, because, we don't use the toilet. It's just a model. So it's like going to IKEA. IKEA doesn't have to have, their models of how your house can look if you buy their things. So you can have that. These are the roundabouts, how you get it. So it's all depending on what are you trying to achieve? What do you have to work with?
Exactly.
Do we want a city, or is it better to just have a visual presentation? So under certain circumstances, they push for that and say, they do a survey and say, we think it is more appropriate to educate people instead of looking like a cult of, 10,000 people sealed off in a circular city. So These are the things that we have to arrive at. That's what I said, is that Jacque Fresco's design is to get you going in a direction,
Absolutely.
but it has to be re-examined, all of the parts.
Absolutely,
Worked
I
over.
understand that. But I mean, as a first step, is that not something we can explore? Putting the fund and the effort towards building a more functional miniature city that actually proves the design, that can get inspectors looking at it, right? Those building inspectors looking at it, studying how the different propositions for the design work, putting it to the test. And then if they're comfortable with that, then we can go for a fuller scale.
Yeah. Now, the more important question to me is that, can we do that? Do we have any resources? And at this time, there is none. So for me, it is an adventure of a lost cause. It is something you can explore, but without any resources, I would say it is better to spend your time educating yourself about the subject. When you have the resources, that is more appropriate than then you sit down and say, what are we going to do here? Because there can be so many differences from day to day. You know, suddenly tomorrow, somebody might say, here's $1 million, here's $1 billion, here's a country that says, we're going to back your project. A university says that. So how many contingencies do you want? It becomes too much of a time waster. It is better to say, what do we have to work with? And you work within that frame. That's my approach, my attitude towards it. Because what happens usually is that we get 1 million ideas, but nobody is going to do anything about it. We rather work with what we have. Thank you for your question, Karim. Let me know if you have any further ones. Yes, sorry, Adam. Because on this topic, and then I'm going to take Jeff.
Sure. I'll just briefly also comment from Karim, your particular questions, that the Center for Resource Management, that this first test build after the Venus project has their place in Venus, Florida, it isn't about proving his design in so much as it's more about spreading education and awareness. With this first major build, we want to keep it simple. We don't want to push the envelope in absolutely every direction. We want to build something that we like, we're happy with, respects Jacque's designs, but is buildable and within budget restrictions. Otherwise, it's going to cost way too much money, and then it won't be feasible. The importance, what Jacque's message is, Jacque's message is not about the cities or the structures. It's about the message. That's what's important.
Thank you for that, Adam. Jeff, what is your question? Where are you from, Jeff?
I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States. I'd like to say thank you for holding this forum. And it's nice to see many like-minded people interested in the Venus project. My question is, has anyone from the Venus project or the renewable energy movement been able to network with a fellow by the name of Akon, who is in Senegal, Africa, creating what's called Akon City, which will be a totally renewable energy powered city. He's already has his solar company in 13 different countries in Africa. He started off at Senegal and then branched out into other countries in Africa. And he seems to be bringing to fruition a renewable energy or a city that is completely powered by renewable energy. Is there any hierarchy in the Venus project that has been able to network or get in contact with him to maybe bring some of the Venus project ideas to him, since he seems to be the closest person or entity in the world that seems to be pushing in that direction.
Mm.
And if anybody would like to, I can always link the his interview. He has a YouTube interview saying that his city will be opening in 2026. And I can link it into the chat if anyone wants any more information about that.
Yes, thank you for that, Jeff. We can have a look at that. I know that Roxanne meets a lot of people that want to build, cities, and they sit down and talk. But unfortunately, most of them bring particular values that they uphold. And then there is a clash in values. They want to maintain certain things. And the Venus Project, what they're proposing becomes a re-examination of all values. And this is what most people have difficulties when they're creating something. They want to maintain it in a certain way. And therefore, usually, based on what I've heard, it doesn't work out. But please share that link, and I will send it forward to Roxanne and see if we can maybe establish something there. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Is it Aaron? Hey, Aaron, where are you from?
Yes, hi. I'm Aaron. Thanks again, just like Jeff was saying, for hosting this. I think it's a great opportunity for like-minded people to come together. So thanks for that. I'm Aaron. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm joining just because I would love to open my mind a little bit more to new ideas, new concepts of living. And I have a question for you. I wrote it down here. I'll just read it out.
Thank you.
How would TVP incorporate individuals into a city after technological goals have been met, infrastructure has been finished? What and who determines an individual is ready to function within this new system, and how would the TVP go about it?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Now I'm going to draw something for you. Now, when you look at the city that we talk about, there is always a reason for it. It isn't just there for living and, having somewhere to sleep. It is built for a reason, just like a factory. There's a particular reason they build a factory, because they want a particular outcome. So when a city is built, they don't start building it. The first question is, why do we want to build this? What are the things that we want to accomplish? So they have certain goals for the city. Then you start to put in people that are relevant to that city based on the goal. Now, for example, I say to them, hey guys, I've been working 20 years and you're putting Aaron there and he just heard about it. They say, yes, but he's more relevant regarding the goal. You're not educated with the things that we're trying to accomplish in this particular city. So when will the person be able to function depending on what is the goal at that particular time? This is how I would view the first city. What are they trying to achieve? And then you put in what is relevant into that city. And if you have resources, then you say this part of the city is for education, to make them more relevant towards what we're aiming for. But they first go in here, just like everybody, every other place. If you want to become a doctor, you want to become a programmer, you don't just go to work and say, I'm here, I'm interested. You have to go and get an education regarding what you're trying to achieve. Aaron, did I miss any part of your question?
I think you're touching on it really well. It's just such a strange concept because of our system that we have now. So could you touch a little bit more on I guess, the psychological state of the people. Like if an individual may be suffering from some kind of mental depression, or I don't know if I'm able to word it in a way that you could understand the question, but do you see where I'm trying to take the...
That they have certain limitations and you want to get them, going in this direction, something like that. Now, the first part of this, which is very interesting to me, and I hope you all keep it in mind, is that all societies want to push people in their own, their own path. And remember that in all societies, there is always a person on top. Somebody is gaining by forcing you on that path. The Venus Project's approach makes it different. You are not participating in somebody's force of control to get you to do things that makes my life better. You are forced, not forced, but controlled in this way, that we would like you to connect with reality, that it is no longer depending on what the leader thinks is reality, but the closer you can come to reality. And that is where we rely on the scientific method of arriving at what is more appropriate. So you don't have a person on top of the city, bringing people in and saying, take care of me. When they bring them in, they try to educate them towards reality, how to arrive at things. When they build something, a person might ask, why did this city create this? And they will show them how they arrived at that particular building. They say, at this time, we have 5,000 people that are interested in drawing. This building is designed for them. 6 months later, you come there and say, they have removed that building. How come? Say, people are no longer that interested. So we have a smaller building for them, and this is the new building where new things, new approaches are being arrived at. But there is no person that is gaining personally out of it. They gain from it in a collective way. That means that, for example, if you would look at your own body in that manner, the better my body functions, the better I can get my needs. I can do the things that I need. The city of the future and the society of the future is that the better you work, the better you're clear, the better you can accomplish things, the better my life becomes, even though we never meet each other. Whatever you improve upon will go round to me. So when you meet people of the future, you want to bring them up, because I know that the better you become, the better my life will become. So that is the incentive of the future, to always assist others. In today's society, it is unfortunately a lot of times the opposite. How can I push this person down so I can maintain my level of status, so I can get the gains for myself? If I don't take it, somebody else will. So we're constant battle with each other. The society of the future changes those circumstances. So I'm reinforced by seeing you improve on your journey. Aaron, I hope I touched upon the things that you were thinking about. Now I want to touch upon depression as well. The people of the future will not be depressed. And the reason they are not depressed is because they are brought up in a world that is designed for them not to become depressed. In today's society, it is by design for you to have problems in your way of thinking. So it's very difficult to live in an insane world and try to stay sane, because the insanity drives you towards that. Now, have you got the latest car? If you don't, there's something wrong with you. People put you down. All of these things are built into this society, just like a phone that doesn't work. There is a benefit in today's society when your things don't work. The supplier says, fantastic. Now I can create more phones. And in 2 years, when that breaks down, you have to come back to me and you have to buy things. In the future, just like phones won't break down, people will be brought up in a way to be able to handle the problems that occur in their life. Because there is no longer any benefits for somebody to not be able to handle themselves. So they will be very secure in their upbringing. And when they meet other people, they won't look for love. Because love is an insecurity of wanting, the way I'm projecting into it here, is that you're looking for somebody to fulfill you. You know, I felt so empty until I met you. In the future, you are fulfilled by the person that you are. When you meet other people, you ask this question: what can I do for you? You don't need to do anything for me. I have a journey. I'm doing 100 things that I enjoy. Can I assist you in a way? So you're always picking people up as much as they permit you. I hope that clarified it, Aaron. It's a different way of looking at depression. To us, depression is not something you're born with. It is something that is generated by the values that society gives you. And so we don't look at people as fixed in that manner. It's a particular state that can, if you change the circumstances, the person can get out of it. It's difficult to do in today's society, because when you go to a shrink, it says, 1 hour. Why is it 1 hour? Why isn't it 45 minutes or 10 hours? Why aren't there any 10-hour shrink sessions or 5 minutes? Because they don't know what they're doing. And they just arrive at, hey, 1 hour, see you next week, see you next week, see you next week. The shrink has incentives to have you back next week. If he would solve your problem, where is the paycheck? There is no bonus with that. It's just that the person stops seeing you. Aaron, let me know if something that I said was not clear.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'd like to add that I would love to see more of the Venus Project talk about the mental state of people within the future, and how we could work together, and talk about emotional states, compassion and love, and even the darker ones, hate, and like you were touching on depression. Yeah, so that's all I really have to add.
Can I ask you something, Aaron? What do you do for a living?
I work in streaming radio.
Streaming radio. Are you like a technician?
Yes, I do like board operation stuff.
Okay, but is it very technical?
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to give you signs of sanity. Now imagine you're very technical in your field, and I just step into the room next to you and say, the things you do not work. It's impossible. Because you have a reference for what you're doing, you might ask this question, I don't understand what you're saying. You have to specify what you're talking about. Because you have something that you have the ability in that field to point and say, here might be a problem, here might not be a problem. Just like a structural engineer, if somebody comes to them and says, this building will never hold up, he would ask, what part of it? What is your concern? He says, all of it. He says, I can't do anything with that. You're not being referential in your language. So the more technical you are in those areas, you're very sane. The car mechanic working on a car has less mental problems regarding the car. But when he goes home and he has interactions with people and somebody says, you're not good. Good is not something that is referential. You have to ask the person, what do you mean by good? They say, you didn't bring me coffee last week. To them, that means, good or bad. And so the language when it comes to relationship is not referential. That's why we get confused. They say these people are bad. Homosexuals, there's something wrong with them. That's what they said 20 years ago. Now they say they're fine. Imagine being a person living their entire life with homosexuality is bad. And then suddenly I said, I don't like homosexuals. And then the whole of society destroys their lives without any concern of how they were brought up. And the person might go insane because the world changed and they were never brought up to change with the world. They were given fixed concepts. But in your field, if they change your work, you can continue that journey and say, yes, I used to work with this way. That's obsolete. Now I adapt to the new. So in your field, you're sane. In relationships, we are not brought up to be sane. That's why we have so many problems. We have so many interpretations of what other people think of us without any clear reference. Now, in the future, there is no nice people. And the reason for it is because there is no need for you to be nice. When you're nice to somebody else, that means that you have an advantage over them. For example, if they come to you and say, in Afghanistan, they need blankets. You have to be a nice person to give them blankets. And then somebody says, you're nice. In the future, they will never ask people, can you donate blankets? It will be built into the system to solve those problems, to always solve them instead of depending on people's niceness to other people. That's why I say there are no nice people, because the circumstances doesn't force them to think of others and say, oh God, okay, here's my blanket. I guess I'm a nice person. We would like to see a society where you don't have to depend on my niceness. You will get access to whatever is available, even though I don't like you. The world of the future has no concerns regarding my personal opinions about anybody. They will supply the best that they can to all the world's people. So those are a couple of tangents about the future and some of the ideas I have about it, or that I have learned about it. Now, anger, as you mentioned, anger is a byproduct of your environment. Even psychopaths, psychopaths to us is just a product of the environment. So they have been brought up in a certain way that certain things push their buttons. If you go to another culture and you meet another psychopath and you push other buttons, he's not moved by that. But if you push certain buttons, he's moved by that and might hurt you. So if you don't want violence in the future, you have to look at what generates that behavior. And then you design a world where you don't have those problems. If you don't want children to be fighting over toys, you make them available. If they don't have the ability, even though they have 100 toys, they still want that toy, then you might have to separate them until they have enough abilities to be able to understand that we all have access to toys. But in today's society, you take a 2-year-old and say share. The child can barely find their own nose, and they're supposed to understand the concept of sharing. So we push too much on small children too fast. In a world of the future, you don't have that stress. You look at them and say, apparently he doesn't have the abilities yet. So you leave them alone and you work on it. Karim, what is your question?
Actually, it's not more of a question rather than a situation that I was put in. I was talking to this therapist about narcissism. Okay. And her way of describing narcissism, or at least the books that she was using, described it as extreme behavior. So I asked her the question, in your case, you guys have a guideline of what a normal person is for you to qualify these behaviors as extreme. Because to me, you're labeling someone as normal, and then based on that, you're putting these extremes on it. Anyway, she justified it in her own understanding of today's society. But I just wanted to say that as part of what you were talking earlier about counseling.
Yeah,
it was very interesting to see.
Yeah, your point is very important. Is that you can't be normal because normal doesn't have a reference. Even narcissist is that person's personal interpretation of what that means. But if you would become normal today, tomorrow society has changed. There isn't a fixed state of normal behavior. So there is no, it is the story of people trying to escape Soviet Russia. And when they captured them, they brought them and they took them to the shrink. They said, "You're sick. Where are you going? This is the best place in the world. There's something wrong with you. You have a mental illness." Now, whatever you think about that, that's how all countries portray people that want to leave their country. Say there must be something wrong with them because there can't be anything wrong with our society. But they don't have a clear definition of what normal is. So that's your biggest problem. So if you're walking around saying, "I'm not normal," yeah, I don't know what that means. I'm not good. I still don't know what that means. Good is a certain thing for certain circumstances in a part of the world that they accept as good behavior. Okay. Thank you, Karim, for sharing that. Let me know, guys, if you have any further questions or thoughts that you want to share with us. Yeah, Marco.
Regarding resource-based economy, by your opinion, can you share with us some example of any country, region, ethnic group on this planet that has some features of the resource-based economy? I am asking this because if I had the opportunity to talk about it, just to give to my friends or people I'm talking about the example.
Yeah.
To share, so I can start a conversation or some explanation in future.
Yeah. Now, let's take just a particular spot. Like I mentioned to you earlier, let's just start something simple. And imagine going to space. And now, space travel is a very technical field. They don't have the luxury of screwing around in that field because it's so expensive. So they have to become more technical regarding what they do. And that is a resource-based economy, is that they rely on arriving at decisions. How big should the rocket be? What are you trying to achieve? How much fuel do we need? You know, what are you trying to get up into space and where are you going? All of those are technical fields or technical solutions that have to be arrived at. Nobody can sit there and say, you know, somewhere between Mars and the moon would be very nice. You know, they can't do anything with that. It would be very difficult based on today's resources. So that is, for me, a very similar way of a resource-based economy, that all fields become in that manner. They have a goal in mind. They look at the resources, what is available. They look at the manpower and the technology and say, can we achieve that? And then the society moves in that direction. Is that direction relevant? They have to do a survey. What do people want? What are they trying to achieve? What are their interests? And then you move in that direction. So a resource-based economy reflects reality. Capitalism has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with the game that is called capitalism. For example, money could reflect reality if it functioned in this manner, that it was fixed. So today I get 10 tomatoes for $1. When technology improves and we can create more tomatoes, then tomorrow I get 20 tomatoes for $1. There is no correlation like this. There is a little bit, but it is way off in reflecting reality because it is not a unified system. They don't know what this company is going to do tomorrow. They don't know if China is going to stop selling steel. So they cannot predict. So they're just pushing buttons and hoping that this price is okay. They try to do surveys and say, will people pay $1 million for movie tickets? No. $50? Yes, if it looks really nice in the movie theater and they try it out. Okay, so you have to have a unified system that the globe goes in the same directions. So they're connected. And these are the parts that you don't have in today's society. Let me know, Marco, if I missed any part of your question.
Well, okay, maybe I didn't receive the answer I expected, but you clear to me that maybe my approach to this topic was a little bit out of the road.
No, let me just know how you approach it. It's interesting to me. How did you try to approach that topic?
I try to, let's say, observe any country or ethnic group or some region in the world with some group of people set and say, okay, let's change something.
Okay.
Let's control our resources. Let's decide how to fix something, how to approve something. Or
you don't have that in today's society. If you had that, if you had arriving at decisions, immediately you wouldn't have a top player. You wouldn't have a person that is gaining from the system. You would have a neutral state of people working together. The person in charge enjoys the scientific method when they find the gains. When they implement technology and they say, it's going to be cheaper to move this amount of oil from this country here if we use this method. The person in charge says, fantastic, implement that. And somebody comes and says, it will be more appropriate if we don't have a leader like you, which we have to go to and say these things, and we can do the work better and supply the world with oil. If we remove you, he says, I don't like this kind of scientific work. Can you please remove this person? So that's the problem you have in society. And that's what we mentioned earlier with people that are building cities, is that they like certain parts of the Venus Project. They don't like all of the parts because they lose their identity. They lose their particular participation that they have generated for themselves. Okay. Marco, toss that around and see how it goes in the future. And let me know if you find anything that you feel is relevant and we can discuss it in the future.
Sure. Also, if we have time, I would like to just share something. Maybe it will be interesting, and it is related to environmental protection. Well, at this point, we have very popular concept, circular economy. But the more I read about it, it seems to me that it's the only goal of that is to support circular or cyclic consumption. So we have. So it is presented to us as something new. It will fix things. It will manage more efficient to control the waste management all over the world. But seems to me it is another way just to some let's say more developed countries or a big corporation. It will use that to gain resources for their products, and they will let's say they will invest less and again earn more money. So we will have the same thing. Nothing will be changed. So we need to pay attention to that details. So let's say somebody is trying to use, let's say, the idea of the resource-based economy, but is covered on some other terms.
Agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. How we would find out?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, first, let me address what you just mentioned with the circular economy. All of these systems are stepping stones. But if you enjoy one of them, look at them in that manner, that there are stepping stones. And when you look at the resource-based economy, that's the thing that is 20 steps ahead. Okay, so enjoy whatever you find, but have a goal in mind. And when you learn more about the resource-based economy, when you see these other systems, you say, I accept it, but now because I have a reference, I can see the limitations in this system. That is why it is good to learn about the Venus Project. You will be able to examine other systems and see their limitations and say, it's fine for now, but it has more work to be done. In a resource-based economy, because you arrive at decisions, they're not just made out of nowhere. It is easier to find things that do not correlate with reality. The problems most people have is that they feel that in a resource-based economy, somebody would hoard for themselves. They would keep resources to themselves. If you have a resource-based economy that they gain from doing that, then people will hoard. They will take for their own benefits. For example, if you would live in between capitalism and a resource-based economy, if a person living in a resource-based economy would steal things and get more benefits in capitalism, there will be a high probability of people doing that, because we look at it as a reinforced behavior. They are moved towards that. In a fully functional resource-based economy, if you hoard resources, you're hurting yourself. To us, it is like going to the doctor and stealing his tools just before surgery and saying, I'm just going to take this and put it in my pocket. And then he comes in and says, I have no tools. I can't help you. So then in that circumstances, the person is not reinforced anymore to take for themselves. And for the first time in society, in the history of man, you will have a behavior that says, no, please, you have it. If we have limitations, say, no, that's fine, because I know it will go around and come back to me with benefits. Okay, Marco, toss that around as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paulo?
Hi, a quick question. I want to know if you know the Auroville city in India. I saw some videos years ago, and it's very similar to the Venus project goals. At least looks to me it's very similar. Do you know about them? I will leave the link here in the chat. Could you talk about this?
Yeah, sure. The more we learn about something, the less things look similar. If you whatever field you're in, if you like ballet, and I come to you and say, ballet is like any kind of dancing, because I don't know enough about the subject. I say, I saw break dancing, that's like ballet, because I have limitations regarding what the differences are. So for me, I will not go into this subject. I will look at it afterwards. But based on my experience, and I'm always looking for things that are very similar. So I don't presume that it isn't. But based on my experience, they are working within the system and they're trying something out, and they're tackling particular areas. And maybe some things are right on the spot. And we say, perfect, exactly like we envisioned it. But in these other areas, there are limitations. Marshall.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Marshall, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, sorry, I'm actually driving. I just wanted to say thank you for setting this up and for being on here. I've been a very, very long supporter of the Venus Project since 2010. It was not to do because of the Zeitgeist movement, but I have kind of a shift in question to you, not directly to the Venus Project, more to you though. it's a shift of topic. I know that you said within this discussion that the Venus Project is a couple steps ahead with certain systems right now. And the topic that's related to me right now that I want to ask is spirituality. I know that Jacque Fresco, his work was based on a lot of indigenous cultures, and a lot of these indigenous cultures were super ahead with their spirituality as far as not needing money and being highly connected to the natural environment and ecosystem. What are your thoughts as far as how spirituality will still play a role, how it's still based, at least with the conception of the Venus Project in today's terms?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you the difficulties I have with the question is that spirituality, to me, it is a personal interpretation of something. So when I start, immediately somebody can say to me, that's not what I mean by spirituality. Now, for example, if I would ask everybody, which I have done in the past, to take a particular word and say, write a sentence of what is spirituality, and we're 23 people here, you will see the differences in the answers regarding what is spirituality. So, but to simplify it, I would say that in a resource-based economy, you would be given space to explore all areas. So it's open to you. If you want to go and do meditation, for 5 years in a cave, you're welcome to do so, because the world is no longer depending on everybody's participation. The thing that will happen is that in a world where you're more referential, that means that, for example, if I go and say, I want 5 liters of milk, 2 pounds of flour, and I get exactly that, in a world like that, the more I am vague with my language, I don't always get exactly what I want. So I say, I want something nice to eat. And they just give me something. I said, yeah, it was nice, but not that nice. And they will ask, can you give a reference regarding what do you mean by nice? So the children of the future will be brought up to be able to specify what it is they're talking about, what they are trying to achieve, what their goals are, so they specify it. Today, we have a lot of vagueness in our society, and which is the major problem. That's why we have difficulties talking with each other. And the more problems we have, the easier it is for somebody to control our behavior, to move us in different directions, because we cannot unify. We don't have a way of talking to each other where we say, I know exactly how we're going to go about it, and we go synced in that manner. You have it in technical fields. You don't have it in protests. When you go to a protest and you say, what is the cause? And if you would stand with each of them and say, what are you trying to achieve? What is the purpose of this? We want freedom. What is freedom? All of these become problems because they have not been brought up to be referential. So they have a lot of words. You have that in politics. That's what you get 24/7. And you don't know what the problem is. That's what you get from religion. That's what you get from spirituality. So, but don't concern yourself too much at it. Imagine instead, if you want, in the future, you will have the space to explore those areas. Nobody's there to put them down. Nobody's concerned with your personal agendas regarding what you find as fulfillment, because there is no longer need for everybody's participation. So I'm trying to give you two aspects of it: how people will be educated, and they will find it reinforcing by living in that kind of world, because they get more accurate what they want. If they want to explore particular areas, they have space for the first time to do whatever they want. Not whatever. You never had a society where you could do whatever you want, but you will have more opportunities to explore life. I hope that clarified this. Let me know, Mikhail, if you find it difficult to understand, or sorry, was it? I forgot who asked that question, but please let me know if it wasn't clarified.
It's Marshall. No, thank you so much. I think it's not an easy question, because the reason why I got into the Venus Project was because it really based a lot of indigenous ideas and practices on nature and earth. But of course, being modern and scientific in the age that we are today, it makes perfect sense. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marshall. Let's see. For example, here, Arakim, he says, my interpretation of spirituality is that the transfiguration of the zeitgeist is the sublimitation of Ubuntu. Well, that was very different from my interpretation. But the point here is the example is that all of us have different interpretations. And this causes problems in communication. So we have to become better, especially when you're talking to people about the Venus Project, and you ask them, what is your reference for this and that? What do you think a good world is? Instead of just projecting that everybody wants to see a good world. They might not want to see that kind of world that you're suggesting. They say that as a false world, a world full of scientists with their lines and their calculations, and they say how cold they are. But to us, they are warm. They are the warmest people because they work on your problems instead of just holding your hand and saying, I'm here. I can't do anything, but I'm here. And we need that in today's society because of the limitations. In the future, we say, yes, please, hold the hand, but are you working on something? Because they have seen a world where people are constantly working to improve things for others and themselves. So in that world, it would be very cold of you to hold somebody's hand and saying, everything's fine, everything's going to be okay, when you know it's not. It would be the opposite in that world. They say, no, go work on it instead. Toss those ideas around. Okay, guys, let me know if you have any further questions. I think we can take a last one. It's been 2 hours. Time flies. I look at it, it was 11 for me. Now it's almost 12. So I hope you enjoy it. I am very happy that you guys joined these sessions. And, the best thing you can do is to learn about the subject. A million people ask me, well, what can I do? You have to learn about what it is you want to do. If you can't know about a subject, you can't do anything. It's like going to a impoverished area and you say, what can I do? What is your education? I'm a plumber. Yeah, fix plumbing. The kids are starving to that. Do you know anything about farming? No. Then you have to go back, educate yourself, come there and do something. Same here. If you want to do something, you have to first learn. And out of it, it will come very naturally when you talk to other people, because now you have a goal in mind, you know what the subject is, you know what you want to achieve, and it flows more comfortably. But you have to practice a lot. Karim, let's take your last question or statement.
Well, I guess it is a question. So just to give you a bit of background, I was actually the POC in the UAE back in 2017, 18, something along the lines. No, before that. So I did get a lot of education on the Venus project, and also a bit of background on myself. I work in software sales, so I'm a salesman. But what I found a bit difficult to explain to people, since the Venus project is really a holistic approach. It has many different angles to approach it that kind of counterbalance each other. And as you know, in sales, there's this concept of an elevator pitch. have we actually developed some sort of elevator pitch that you can explain the Venus project in 5 minutes without having to explain all the uh, information that goes under that?
Yeah, that's what
That's
I've
what I
been.
found very difficult.
That's what I've been working on for 10 years. You know, the question that brings me to tears is, what is the Venus project? Because it's such a big thing that, you know, you don't even, I always find myself sounding like I'm thinking this person must think I'm an idiot when I try to explain it in 5 minutes. That's why me personally, I try to avoid that question and never bring up the Venus project when I'm sitting in a cafeteria or a restaurant. I talk about specific areas. What do you think about human nature? What do you think about free will? Is that fixed? What do you think about the problems with language, about interpretation? So you break it down in segments. You know, the question, you know, how would the world work without money? You know, break it down and keep it simple. That's the pitch I try. So what do you think, Karim? Can I sell you on that? Yeah, we got to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I tried that approach, but then I always find myself trying to explain, going into education, for example, explaining how education is going to be done or should be done in order in complementing basically human behavior. And it just becomes all this interlinked explanation that's kind of becomes complicated for someone to follow.
Yeah, it's because it's like when you listen to Jacque Fresco for the first time, you might say this guy is insane because he's jumping from topic to topic. It's because to him, it's an interconnected.
It's exactly,
absolutely. Yeah. So there is no like, here is the answer, here, exactly here. No, this question has to do with 10 other things. And most of the time, the question has to do with the limitations of the person asking the questions. So most of the time, we don't address the question directly. We talk about the limitations of the person. So they say to us, how can you have a world where people aren't violent? To us, it means that the person thinks that behavior is fixed. So we talk about how environment shapes behavior. He says, you didn't answer my question about violence. So now I have to start here and talk about how we are all shaped by the environment. And then you move towards how violence is generated in today's society. All right. Karim, I muted you. You were cooking. Did you say anything? No, okay, great.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just haven't had lunch yet, so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We love the dedication, cooking and listening. That's perfect.
Can I add one thing to that topic? For me personally, diving into the Venus Project was mostly about unlearning everything that I've been indoctrinated into about a capitalistic system. So, you know, talking about that 5-minute pitch or something, I don't think it would ever be easy. And it's best to think about the individual you're speaking to and like kind of not educating them on the subject that they're asking about, but like you were saying, you know, if you have to bounce around, you have to bounce around and take one topic at a time, because every single thing is intertwined in this massive idea of a resource-based economy. So like I still think of myself, like when I try to think about the Venus Project, I still find myself latching onto these old ideas. You know, like I'll use the word renting, like, oh, you go rent a bike when trying to explain something. No, you're not renting it, you know? So those, you know, the words you use and all that. So I just wanted to add that there. And it's really for me about unlearning everything so that we can absorb more information, new ideas, you know?
Yeah, that, you know, it's not enough. This is the obstacle that we have each time, is that it's a constant correction. So what I become is a constant, I have to correct. And I have to do it in a way where the person doesn't feel offended. Because if you want to learn this concept, I have to address problems that you have learned in today's society, the way of thinking, to be able to see the other way that we would like you to envision. So it becomes this constant, I have to say something to correct it. Now, when I did the orientation process with the new candidates, I started slow. We had they go through a 22-week education. So I start slow corrections. And then do you remember this example? And then we build. And at the end, we have something to work with. And we have built an established, by Adam, we have built a base to be constantly assisting each other. And they correct me if I use something inappropriate, and Pejman, you messed up there. I said, thank you. I'm so happy that you assist me in this manner. So the better way of approaching it, if you're going to take it on, is this kind of environment where I create some form of event where you guys come here and that there is a particular thing going on. Try to avoid sitting in 15 minutes trying to sell this pitch. It's very difficult. First, educate yourself, and then when you tackle it, create a space for it where you are permitted to talk a long time. Now, if I go to another place and they're talking about the future, they're not permitting me to talk about the future that I want to talk about. And there I have to lean back and permit the conversation to go and see if I can jump in an appropriate time. Okay, guys, it's been 2 hours. Paulo, you says it's about cultural change. I live it a lot. I live it a lot in my job. The company I work is trying to change the internal employee culture from competitive approach to collaborative approach to enable innovation. Yeah. Now, that's also a good example of how circumstances changed and they want to approach it in a different manner because they were so competitive with other companies that they started to compete with their own employees. And they say, that's not good. Now they're not talking with each other. So they're trying to create change because they're forced to, because of the circumstances of the company not being able to do what they want. Okay, guys, thank you for joining today's session. I hope it was rewarding in some way. And I will post something new in like 2-3 weeks. I hope to see you there again.
Can we
Thank
ask
you.
you how to
Good night.
get you?
Thanks.
Thanks, Payman.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you guys. Yep, take care.
Thank you.
Hi. Marshall, what did you ask? I don't mind.
If we want us to communicate with you again, like send you an email, what would be the best way to communicate with you?
Oh, via Facebook. Did you join here via Facebook?
No, I was sent a link by a friend here, Alex, based in New Zealand, via LinkedIn.
Yeah. If you via LinkedIn, Alex, did you send him?
Yes, I sent to Marshall. We've been talking before.
Okay, okay, perfect. Can you assist him so he can find me?
Okay. I will send it to you, Marshall.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
No
Blessings.
worries.
Thanks.
Okay, then we'll try it again. Bye, guys. See you next time.
See ya.